Hey YouTube, this is Mike. I'm going to try my hand at some post audio here. I'm going to talk through this video. Cut down a few trees and got some good video of it, I think. This first, I don't do a whole ton of tree work. I enjoy it a lot, but I don't do like high-end, like dangerous tree work. I leave that to the guys who do just that. But these were all pretty easy, and this particular one, this tree was mostly dead, so I was a little bit concerned about how it was going to fall, so I put the Bobcat against it just for a little bit of insurance there. But again, it was pretty easy. I used a little wedge on it, but mostly in this video I'm using some techniques that I've been learning off of YouTube. Mostly I've been using a chainsaw all my life, but I hadn't really studied it, and so I was trying some techniques, not because these trees really called for it, because they were pretty easy trees, but you'll see later on I destroyed a wedge just because I was trying to use a wedge in a tree that really wasn't big enough for it. But anyway, but this was kind of an easy job because the homeowner wanted to keep the wood for firewood, and he said he'd come back later and split it. So basically I just needed to limb these things up, and then he has a huge brush pile in the back of the property, so really all I had to do was just haul the brush back there and then just cut the logs into firewood size lengths, and so that was all pretty straightforward. And so I've got this Demo Dozer grapple bucket on here. This is the first job I've used it on. It's virtually brand new. But it's pretty slick because I can grab a log like that and just pivot it in there, and then really super easy to cut. So I cut up all three of these trees, just cut the logs up just like this. Super handy. Most of this video I've got running 12 times speed, just because frankly it's just really pretty repetitive, and y'all know what it looks like to cut logs up. In case anyone's interested, I didn't show this in the video anywhere, but that chainsaw is a Stihl 261 C, I think, or CM, or whatever they call it, with it's got the M-tronic whatever. It's basically the computer chip controlled carburetor, and that is worth the price of admission. This thing is absolutely awesome, and it's not super, I mean, it's a professional level chainsaw, but it's not super powerful. It's not particularly large. It's just 18-inch bar, and it's just kind of a standard middle of the road as far as the size and the power and all that, but it runs perfectly with that chip control. It's just it always idles perfectly. It starts super easily, and I highly recommend that M-tronic situation. It's very, very nice. This is kind of boring. I just put this in here just really to show off the Demo Dozer. This thing's pretty slick. I've never had a grapple before, never even used a grapple before, but this one's pretty unique. It's the only one out there like it that has that piece across the front of it is really flat, so you can grab anything with it. When it closes, it's shut seamlessly all the way across the front, as opposed to having teeth that are biting down. So you can grab individual things. You can grab trees or pipes or rebar or anything that happens to be there, and just grab a piece of it and go to town. This one right here was pretty straightforward because it was already leaning about, I don't know, 10 or 15 degrees. But so I didn't really do anything special on this one, just notched it and cut it. personally, I think it does a man good to cut down a tree every now and then. It's just an awesome feeling. I just love it. And you know, I'm fairly safety conscious, so I don't take risks. I'm not much of a risk taker. And both of these first two trees were actually in range of the house, but they were pretty easy, so I wasn't concerned about them. If they'd been another 10 or 15 feet tall, I probably would have left them, but you know, I was already here doing another job, and they just happened to mention they had to take these trees out. I said, well, shoot, I'll take them out while I'm here, and I'm sure, since I'm already here, I'm sure I'll save you money over a tree service, and these are pretty straightforward, so just got it knocked out and really enjoyed doing this. I just love working on trees. It's really fun. It's even more fun when you have a second set of hands for pulling all this junk out of the way, but that's all right. Sometimes when I'm doing trees, I'll make a plan to get somebody there with me. It's just, it really is a two-person job. Most of what I just do by myself. This was, I could have used an extra hand on this, but it went fine. Camera ran out of battery before I got the scene all the way done, but it's alright. Here the Demo Dozer was super nice for hauling this stuff away. The back of the bucket there has a little flat spot, and it's specifically designed there to wedge logs in or poles or whatever it is you're picking up, so it'll stay straight like that. So they actually designed it that way. Oh, there's a bug. These things creeped me out. These are wood boring beetles. Had to do a little research on them. They were creepy, and they were all over the place. There were several of them running around there. They were very large. This wasn't even the biggest one I saw. But the weird thing about them is they seem to be drawn to the cutting, to the vibration. So every time I was cutting on the log, if there was one on there or more of them on there, they were running toward where I was cutting. It was very creepy. And they could fly. At one point there was one that flew up onto the Bobcat, and I had to flip it off like right up near the top. So but I did a little research on them, and there's pictures of people holding them in their hands and stuff, so I guess they're not dangerous, but they're ugly. There was one running toward me right here, so I was trying to see him running around on the log, and it kept running toward me, so I was a little bit creeped out. This tree had way more branches on it than the first one, so it was nice to be able to just kind of scoop them up like that. There was quite a lot of cleanup afterwards of all the junk on the ground there, but most of this just came right up. Now this is the stump from that second tree. I wanted to try a little trick that I learned from the Swedish Homestead website, and again, this isn't a big enough trunk for it to really matter, but I wanted to check out the technique. It has to do with if you have to do this to a great big stump that's too heavy for you to pick up, and you don't want to get your blade stuck in there. He demonstrated how you could stick your blade not all the way through, but more than halfway through, maybe 2/3 the way through, and then run it around, cutting with the top of the bar, and that way you're jamming the sawdust that you're producing up under the log, and then you can just slide your blade right out because it's sitting on a cushion of compressed sawdust. That was a little trick I learned from the Swedish Homestead YouTube site, where you go all the way around and the stump ends up laying on a bed of compacted sawdust, and so your blade doesn't get stuck in there. And that's the first time I've tried it, and it worked like a charm. So let's go over here and do it again. So anyway, shout out to Swedish Homestead. That's pretty cool. Some very unhappy carpenter ants here. And there is the sawdust. Very fun. Very fun. This is the one where I was experimenting on some stuff, and I just chewed up one of my wedges, but again, it wasn't really a big enough tree to really probably even require one. It was pretty easy, but I fooled with it anyway and just got my blade into it, tore it all up, but that's all right. I got more. There's some kids up on the porch on the house about 50 yards away watching what I'm doing as I'm doing this. So if the tree goes down, you can hear them yell timber and cheer afterwards. It was really cute. I got a close-up of this after too. So the wedge worked fine, I just didn't leave myself enough room to actually fit the blade in there. The next thing you know, you see all this orange plastic start coming out from in the crack. Oops. Some more super exciting loading up the grapple bucket. This next bit here, I want to clean up this tree, but I didn't want to clean it up right here because it's kind of down in the front yard, and I just didn't want a bunch of junk down here. I wanted to haul it up to where I'd process the other trees. So after I cleaned up all of the junk that I had to pull out of there just to get in there and cut it, I wanted to pull this tree out of here in big pieces. So basically I just cut it in half and hauled it out in 2 pieces. Unfortunately, the Bobcat couldn't reach it where it was because it's a ditch right there, so I just hauled it out some and picked it up. Every time I went down to take that chain off of it, the chain was bound up in something, so I kept getting off the Bobcat and I kept not being able to unhook the chain, so the chain got in my way, and then the tree was too heavy and I tried to drive downhill, and then I'm tipping over forward, and then I was running over the chain, so finally I got the chain off of it right there, and then bottom half of the tree up the hill. Love my new bucket. This one I didn't have that extra log at the bottom of it, and I was going to trim it up some, and I thought, you know what? Forget that. I'm just going to grab it. Grab it just like that. And up the hill we go. Me doing that backwards cutting method again. Just for fun. Close up. Excuse me while I put my knee in your face. I was going to limb this one up like I did the other one and try to save some firewood, but by the time I got in there a little bit, I realized way too many limbs, way too little firewood. There's really not much in there. Because the trunk is split into about 5 pieces and they were all really tiny, and I thought, I'm going to spend all day doing this. So forget it. The whole thing goes to the pile. cut up the stump, pick up the other stumps, and we are good to go. Anyway, thanks for watching. I don't know if anybody's actually going to watch all this, but I sure do appreciate it. And like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.